Welcome to the Economics Brief. Today's report is called The Shrinking Analyst, brought to you by the Institution of the Americas for Strategic Business Intelligence. I'm your host, advisor, and analyst, Rick Alonso, also known as Economics. Disclaimer. This is an unclassified brief for educational purposes only. This episode discusses artificial intelligence, knowledge work, labor compression, and the changing roles of analysts. This is not career advice, investment advice, or a recommendation to avoid any specific AI platform. The purpose is to explain how AI is changing the analyst function and why judgment, verification, decision support are becoming more important. This episode is adapted from the Institution of America's report, The Shrinking Analyst, Knowledge Work, AI Compression, and the New Premium on Decision Grade Insight. Bottom line up front, executive summary. AI is compressing parts of analyst work that were once labor intensive. Summaries and first drafts, market scans, and research maps can now be produced faster at a lower cost. This does not eliminate the analyst function, but it changes where value sits. Analysts who can rely mainly on collecting and packaging information face pressure. Analysts who can frame problems, verify sources, test assumptions, and explain mechanisms, and connect findings to decisions become more valuable. The super ability of providing an effective so what. The analyst role is not disappearing as a function. The lower value production layer is being compressed. Let's get into it. So, welcome to the Economics Brief, brought to you by the Institution of the Americas for Strategic Business Intelligence. I am Rick Alonso. Today's brief examines how AI is changing the analyst role. The issue isn't simply whether analysts disappear. The question is too broad to be useful. The practical question is which parts of the analyst's work are being compressed. AI is reducing the time required to produce the visible parts of analysis. A summary can be generated quickly, and a first draft can be structured in minutes. A basic market overview can sound professional even when the person producing it has limited familiarity with the markets, making the novice sound like a pro. That changes the value of the analyst. For many years, part of the analyst's value came from the ability to collect information and mold it in many different ways, such as organizing it, summarizing, and more importantly, well, one of the most important facets, presenting it clearly. And those skills still matter, but they are no longer sufficient by themselves. Being the PowerPoint ranger is not as valuable as it used to be. AI has lowered the barrier to producing work that looks polished. The risk is that polished can now be mistaken for good judgment or analysis. A clean report does not prove that sources were checked. A clear paragraph does not prove that assumptions were tested. And a confident recommendation does not prove that the conclusion can support the action. And this is what we're talking about, how the role of the analyst is shifting. Because it's not about document or product production anymore. It's about being able to produce these documents reliably enough, in a reliable manner, to influence a decision. Compression, not replacement. The better frame, rather than saying that menial or lower level analyst tasks are being wiped off the face of the earth by AI, the better way to frame that in a realistic way is that it's being compressed. AI absorbs parts of the analytical workflow that are repeatable, language heavy, and easy to structure. So it can help summarize, compare, translate, and draft, but these remain useful, but they're becoming weaker as a standalone source of value. That doesn't mean the analyst role vanishes immediately. In many organizations, the title may remain, the department may remain, but the need for analysts may remain. What changes is the work done inside the role. A junior analyst may be expected to produce summaries faster and spend more time validating the claims. A research assistant may be judged less on the first draft production and more on whether the draft survives review. A strategic analyst may be expected to connect the assessment to action and not just deliver the finished product. The job title can stay the same while the task base changes underneath it, and that's the important point. The lower value work gets compressed first. Analysts who cannot move above that layer may be easier to replace, reduce, or undervalue, or even worse, get paid less, right? The commodity analyst problem. The commodity analyst uses AI mainly to produce more outputs, more summaries, more drafts, and briefings, volume. That may increase the volume, but the volume alone does not create durable value. If many people can produce plausible work, the plausible work becomes less scarce. The stronger analyst uses AI differently. The analyst uses AI to accelerate parts of the process, but keeps control over the assessments or judgments. The analyst reviews the source base, checks whether the claim is supported, identifies the assumptions behind the conclusion, and asks whether the finding matters to the decision, and asks whether the finding or the matters that have been found are relevant to the decision. The distinction is not whether the analyst uses AI. The distinction is whether the analyst uses AI to produce language or to improve the analysis. That difference will matter more over time. The control problem within organizations. Many organizations are using AI faster than they're able to govern. A manager may receive a clean memo without knowing how it was produced. The memo may have been drafted with AI, edited lightly, and passed forward without enough source review. The language of the memo looks stronger than the method behind it, and that creates the quality control problem. The organization gains speed, but it may lose visibility on how conclusions were formed. It may not know which claims were verified, which sources were weak, or which assumptions carried the assessment. This matters for the small and mid-sized businesses in particular. Many don't have formal research teams, AI governance policies, or structured review processes. They would still use AI because it's useful and accessible. That means the organizations may move faster without becoming more disciplined. Faster output does not automatically produce better decisions, and without review standards, weak analysis can move through the business more quickly and more confidence than it deserves. This is why the analyst function is still a matter. The analyst becomes a quality control layer between machine output and business consequence. What the analyst must become. The analyst who remains valuable will not compete with AI on speed alone. The analyst will use the AI where it helps, but retain control over the parts that affect the analysis, the so what, or the judgment. That starts with the problem framing. If the question is poorly framed, AI can produce a polished answer to the wrong problem. It continues with the source review. If the evidence is weak, the output should not carry the decision weight. It requires assumption control, and every assessment depends on something being true. The analyst has to identify what that is. It also requires a mechanism analysis. A report should not only say that a market is changing or a risk is increasing. It should explain how the change is happening and why it matters, and in particular, why it matters to the decision maker. Finally, the analyst has to translate the findings into decision terms. What can be done? What should be watched? What would change the judgment or assessment? Who owns the next step? That's where analysis becomes useful. The output is not the end of the work. The decision is. Analyst comment. The shrinking analyst is best understood as a task compression story. Analysts who mainly summarize, package, and polish information will face pressure because those tasks are becoming easier to automate or accelerate. Analysts who move into judgment or analysis control will remain or retain stronger value. That means framing the problem, testing the evidence, identifying assumptions, explaining the mechanism, connecting the assessment to action. The analyst who remains useful is not simply the one who works faster. It's the one that protects the decision from analysis that looks complete but hasn't been tested. In other words, if you remember in an earlier episode, wisdom. 3 things close. Condition. AI is compressing the lower value task base of analytical work. The next action. Build the analyst role around source verification, assumption testing, mechanism analysis, and decision translation. Owner. Intelligence sector managers, and of course, all the decision makers and analysts listening right now. You can check out more information on this on theinstitutionofamericas.com. In closing, this has been the Rickonomics Brief, brought to you by the Institution of the Americas for Strategic Business Intelligence. I am Rick Alonzo. AI can make analytical work faster, but we all know that speed is not the settling or the last word on making an assessment. The analyst's value now depends on knowing what to test, what to trust, and what can support a real decision. Until the next brief, may wisdom guide your decisions, may faith steady your steps, and may peace be with you.